This is probably the smallest full-frame cinema camera in the world, the sigmafp. Hello, my name is Ole. Welcome to the 5th episode of my sigmafp masterclass. In the last episode we have established everything we need to make our sigmafp footage look great. However, today we want to travel a little bit back in time to grab some historical knowledge and see if this can help us to achieve something even better. In the analog era, movies were shot on film stock. All editing work and cutting was done on film as well. Once the final cut was ready to be sent out to the cinemas, it was necessary to print the copies on something called print film stock. One of the most famous print film stocks is Kodak 2383. This print film stock is enhancing the contrast, further softening the highlight roll-off, is enriching the colors, and last but not least is implementing a nice color separation. These characteristics and the overall workflow from recording to projection were resulting in the look we got used to seeing movies for years and years. With the introduction of digital projection, the technical need to use a print film stock vanished, but our seeing habits still persisted. To reproduce this last step, something called a film print emulation was developed. This loot is to be used at the end of the editing chain and is resembling most of the characteristics of its analog counterpart. If we would try to resemble the full analog workflow from recording to projection, we would need to pull off quite a lot of further tricks, like in example adding bloom, halation, grain, and many more. To keep things simple but still give you an impression of how beneficial it can be to add a film print emulation, I would like to show you some examples. Let's have a look on this shot. In the last episode we have learned how to implement a custom contrast. So in this case I have selected a pivot point of 75 IRE to keep most of the clouds where they are and push everything else back down. Now let's have a look what adding a film print emulation can do. We are enabling our third custom loot, select the film print emulation Kodak 2383 and the flavor of D60, which is basically neutral. D55 would be slightly warmer and D65 slightly cooler. So let's add this. Boom. You immediately notice that there's quite a nice color separation between yellow and blue. You can see that most parts of the shadows are now tinted towards blue. However, the ultimate black level still remains neutral. The highlight roll-off is now even a little bit smoother than before. Since it's now increasing the overall contrast by quite a bit, we could now compensate by going to a slightly higher pivot point. I found that selecting a pivot point which is 10 IRE higher than before adding the film print emulation does the trick. So we are getting back quite a little bit more of our highlight information. I think the picture looks amazing now with film print emulation. Let's turn it off and back on to see the difference. Let's go to the second clip. Again, I've selected a custom contrast. In this case it was set to IRE 50. We are now again adding the film print emulation, enable the loot. You immediately see when you have enabled the film print emulation that we have a lot of color separation between yellow and blue in the clouds and in the shadows. Let's take a look on the third example. Custom contrast was set to 70 IRE. Now enable the Kodak film print loot. Boom. As you can see now we have pushed the clouds quite a bit. So I would like to compensate this in this case. So let's select a slightly higher pivot point. And the clouds are back where they were before. Looks amazing, right? The very saturated blue towards red and the overall color separation. Thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to see you back on the next episodes to discuss a detailed workflow in Final Cut and DaVinci Resolve.